So in this state of Manipur, you can find here the largest freshwater lake of northeast India, called as Loktak Lake. Okay, it is called as Loktak Lake, famous Loktak Lake. It is the largest freshwater lake in the northeastern part of India. So now here you can see that how big it looks. You can see lot of greenery like islands and some fishermen in canoes, and also there are some huts or cottages designed, and they too are floating on that floating islands. Okay, now let us study in details. Now Loktak Lake, it is 266 square kilometers. Loktak is Northeast India's largest freshwater lake. It is a Ramsar site of international importance. It is home to unique floating islands. They are in Manipuri language called as Phumdis. Okay, they are called as Phumdis. Now deep water has no Phumdis, but shallow waters they have plenty of Phumdis. This particular Loktak lake is fed by river Manipur and several other streams and smaller rivers. The largest single mass of Phumdi is home to the Keibul Lamjao, the world's only floating national park covering an area of 40 square kilometers. Now this is Keibul Lamjao. Now what is this Keibul Lamjao? 3 hillock islands, namely Karang, Thanga and Ithing, are located in the Loktak Lake, with a few floating huts also erected on the Phumdi. Once upon a time, Loktak was one of 20 odd wetlands in the region that used to merge into a single water body during the rainy season, and in dry season that used to fell apart. A body of several separate wetlands, locally known as pats. They clump together to form islands that move around freely on the lake. The Phumdis clump together to form islands that move around freely on the lake. And on Loktak's lake, the largest Phumdi is what we popularly call it as the Keibul Lamjao. The word Keibul Lamjao means a vast land where tigers used to gather. Okay, so generally from the surrounding hilly areas, the tigers, to protect themselves from natural calamities like forest fires, once upon a time the tigers used to stay on these floating islands of Keibul Lamjao. Now this is what you are seeing, the Phumdis. So what you find is, from a common person, what appears here in the picture is, you can see some greenery above the lake which is shown in green color, whereas the brownish color shadow type is shown. So they are actually the roots and a huge mat formed by what we call it the Phumdis. Okay, so now inside the water a thick vegetation, organic matter, soil in different stages of decay you can see here. At the same time, above the surface you can see the tall vegetation which can grow up to 3 meters. Now let us understand what is exactly Phumdis. Phumdis is the heterogeneous masses of vegetation, soil and organic matter in various stages of decomposition in which reeds and grasses grow. So this is a mat of organic matter and decaying vegetation which forms the floating meadows. That is what we call it as the floating islands. This particular Phumdis, they are almost like icebergs. So where the peak of the iceberg above the surface of the water is very small portion, but the gigantic portion of the iceberg lies under the surface. Like that, this Phumdi is also 1/5 of the mat, okay, is above the surface of water, and remaining 4/5 is submerged in water. So reeds and grasses, they grow in it, and they grow up to 5 meters. Now this is how the Phumdis, okay, look like. So in A you can see how the brownish color, okay, that is the Phumdis. You can see the Phumdis floating on the surface of the water. Whereas in the dry season, okay, so here now let me explain. Right. So what you find is, okay, what you see is here, this is the Phumdis, okay, floating on the surface. Okay, so these are the roots, okay, of the Phumdis, and this brown color is the mat formed. Okay, now during the wet season they float on the surface of the water, and during the dry season the total Phumdi, that means the Phumdi will settle down to the bottom of the, that is, in other words, we can say the bed of the lake. So when they, during this dry season, the roots of the Phumdi, they come in contact with the bed, that is the soil. So this is the soil part or the bed part. So they come in contact with this bed part. During this time the Phumdis, they extract and absorb the nutrients. At the same time the roots start spreading, and the roots also entangle lot of soil in it. Again when the rainy season comes, so these rise and they get disconnected from the bed of the or soil of the particular lake. So during the wet season you can see what is shown in A, and how they float, and during the dry season when the waters dry up, so these Phumdis, they settle down on the bed of, and during this time they absorb a lot of nutrients as shown in B. Now let us see what next. Next is the life cycle. So life cycle, as we said, during the dry months when the water level recedes, Phumdis settle down on the lake bed to absorb nutrients and pick up soil to replenish their roots and remain alive. Okay, and during rainy season they float. Okay, so the floating biomass emerges to the surface again. Now, what is ATAOBA and ARUPA? So, the Phumdis, clear as we said, has some portion floating above the surface, and the maximum, that is 4/5 or 80%, is below the surface of the water. So, the floating part of the Phumdi is called as ATAOBA, and the submerged part, which is 80%, is called as Phumdi ARUPA. So, what type of plants grow on this mat? Aquatic, semi-aquatic, terrestrial vegetation also grows here. So, what is exactly this Phumdi? Phumdi is a porous and spongy biomass capable of floating due to buoyancy. The Phumdis, they clump together to form islands that move around freely on the lake because they are disconnected. The roots are disconnected from the bed of the lake. Only during the dry season, automatically the water level recedes and they settle down. Again in the rainy season, they again rise up. So the roots get disconnected. This is what the life cycle of the Phumdis. So their shape, that means the Phumdis shape and size change throughout the year. Okay. Now here, this is another kind of structure which we find. They look like green colored rings, but this is not naturally done. Actually, this is artificially planned by the fishermen community living in that lake. So these green rings, which look green rings, clear in aerial view. So what are these dark green rings, which are actually circular fish culture ponds? So for growing the fishes, this kind of green rings are created artificially or manually by the fishermen community. These green rings are called as atafum. So how they make this atafum? By cutting Phumdis into rectangular strips, they create a circular fish culture ponds. That is called as atafum. The atafum is used as a fishing coves. So what they do in these green rings, a big net is cast in atafum, and in that small fishes are released. So that means inside the green circle there is a huge net which is cast. In these are released small fishes, so which are released in this net to grow. Besides this, to attract the fishes from outside the green rings, fish feed is used in atafum, which acts as a bait to attract the fishes from outside the atafum. So fishermen, they in this way farm the fishes or grow the fishes. So fishermen feed the fishes with different kinds of fishes feed. Now here you can see that the thatches which are floating, they are also constructed on the floating mats which is called as Phumdis. Okay, so on the Phumdis, so how these houses are constructed? These floating huts usually belong to fishermen community. A large number of fishermen community live in and around the Loktak lake. The fishermen build their huts on Phumdis. These huts are called as in their language Phumsang. For constructing huts, the Phumdis are strengthened and thickened in mass. So what they do is they cut the Phumdis in a particular shape, and what they do is they cut some of the Phumdis and drop on it the existing mass, so that this is very thickened and strengthened. The huts are made up of bamboo, mats, logs of wood, and tall grasses and other materials. First floating school of India is also on this Loktak lake. First floating homestay in India, which is named as Loktak Aquamarine. So both the floating school, the first floating school of India, and the first floating homestay called as Loktak Aquamarine, both are in Loktak lake. So these floating huts are generally built by the fishermen so that they can stay close to their green rings where they grow their fishes, and they are the owners of that. Now this is how the fishermen, they go for traditional fishing on their canoes. The people who live here, their predominant community is Meitei. Fishing is the important occupation of the people here. They follow the traditional fishery. Phumnamba is traditional community fishing, when all the fishermen community, they help each other in catching the fish. The fishermen use what is in Manipuri language called as he. He means the canoes. Okay, the long boats are called as the he. They consider, the fishermen community consider Loktak as Ima, that is the mother. Besides fish, these people also eat aquatic plants, fruits, stems, leaves, bamboo shoots, etc. Now here comes that why or how Keibul Lamjao came into prominence. So this is what you are seeing in the picture is a special kind of deer called as Sangai. This is also called as dancing deer. This Sangai was declared or believed to be extinct and then declared as extinct way back in 1950s. Later on, after some years, this was seen in what we today say the Keibul Lamjao region, and it was photographed and it was brought into light. So this is Sangai. So this is a type of deer which have a reddish brown to grey colored coat, dark brownish black nose, lips and mouth. Males are taller in height and darker in color than their female counterparts. The young ones are spotted at birth, but these spots fade as the animal grows. It is endemic to this habitat. It is the state animal of Manipur. It is adapted to walk on this soft floating landmass, which I said called as the floating islands, or what we say the Phumdis. The Phumdis behave like a trampoline. So when you walk on a trampoline, so you have to balance. You may get the jump, but it is not stable. Okay. So if the width of the Phumdis is about 1 meter, it can easily support a Sangai moving on that island. So the forward protruding beam, okay, the antlers I am talking about, appears to come out from the eyebrow. Hence Sangai is also called as brow antlered deer. While walking on the floating biomass, Sangai often balances itself, which looks as if it is dancing on the green grassland, and therefore popularly called as dancing deer of Manipur. The deer walks on the hind surface of its pasterns with mincing hops over floating foliage, and is hence also called the dancing deer. Sangai festival, the biggest annual cultural festival organized by Department of Tourism Manipur, is celebrated for 10 days every year in the fall of November in Manipur's capital Imphal. So this makes clear the Keibul Lamjao, the only floating national park on these planets. So thank you for watching. Please do like, subscribe and share